For first time, Ukraine fires ATACMS missiles at Russian airfield. Europe resumes discussions on sending troops to Ukraine and how North Korean missile fired at Ukraine contains a British part. We'll talk about this with Michael Sheitelman, a political strategist based in Kyiv, Ukraine. Michael, good to see you, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good evening.
Michael, Ukraine fires ATACMS missiles at Russian airfield for first time, reported by Militarny web portal with reference to the Ukrainian project Cyber Flower. According to analysts, on the night of the 24th to 25th of November, Ukrainian missile forces struck the Russian tactical aviation airfield Kursk-Vostochny with ATACMS missiles. One of Russia's military bloggers who has ties with the Air Force also confirmed the ballistic missile strike. He claims that Ukraine has launched 8 missiles and the Russians performed combat efforts against 7. Your first reaction, and do you expect, first of all, Putin's reaction on this?
Well, it was obvious that when we received these ATACMS, not only ATACMS, but also permission to hit inside Russian territory, so we will have generally 2 kinds of targets for these missiles. First, it was storages of the big weapon storages, and really the first strike was against storage of weapon in Bryansk district. And our second target is airfields. Against airfields, we especially use cassette missiles with cassette instead of just explosion materials, for damaging more and more people and for damaging more aircraft itself. So that it is just obvious target, and we will see more and more strikes like that. And in nearby future, Russians will remove all the airfields outside of 300 kilometers zone near the Ukrainian border, because they can't stop. As we see, they can't stop these missiles, ATACMS missiles. ATACMS missiles, they are non-visible for radars, almost non-visible for Russian radars. So in previous attack, for example, they shot down just 2 of these missiles, 2 out of 8. And in this attack, it is again almost the same.
Michael, how do you think this attack, what effect will the missiles have on the battlefield right now?
Oh, exactly. This is the question of range of the Russian aviation. Now they just locate their aircraft near the Ukrainian border, and when they start from these airfields, they can almost immediately to use bomb against Ukrainian cities and against also Ukrainian forces on battleground. But then we start bombing their airfields, so they will have to move the airfields out from the Ukrainian territory, and also to 300 kilometers, which is the range of ATACMS missiles, out of Ukrainian territory. Which means that the range of action for these aircrafts will be very short. It means when they start with bombs, they should fly 200-250 kilometers before they use the bombs, and afterwards 250 kilometers back. And it takes time. It takes the mechanical resource of aircrafts, and also it is very dangerous for Russian aircrafts, because our aircrafts, F-16, they have enough time to detect Russian aircrafts as a target and to shut them down by air missiles if we have this one, because we don't know exactly. This is the classified information, so we don't have the real information about these missiles, if we have them or not. But that means that, let's say, if today one Russian aircraft can do, for example, 5, 6, 7 flights per day, in the new reality, it will be 1 or 2 flights per day. This is the difference.
Michael, we hope to see more attacks by ATACMS on Russian airfield and not even airfields, and not even by ATACMS, but by Storm Shadow and Scalp also. About Russian missiles, Ukraine is establishing all the details about the new Russian missile. At the same time, Ukraine is working with partners to find a response to this escalating step by the Kremlin, states Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. We talk about Oreshnik missile, and Zelensky said that today the Security Service of Ukraine and the Ministry of Internal Affairs showed the wreckage of the Russian missile that hit Dnipro to news agencies. How seriously should we take the claim that Russia's new Oreshnik or Kedr missile could overcome any existing modern missile defense systems? Will this have profound global consequences, in your opinion?
You know, this escalation, this step of escalation, this stage from Russian side, this is rather political than military escalation, than technically. When we brought the new weapons, it was the technical escalation, and the answer was also technical from Western side. They just applied us more modern weapons and more long-range weapons. But this missile, Oreshnik, it is not some technological decision, because we don't have tens or hundreds missiles from this type. First. Second, they probably used these missiles without any explosion materials. It was just empty missiles without anything. So all the damage was by fuel of this, by fuel and by the missile itself, and not about explosion materials, because they don't have these missiles in non-nuclear model, and it is very difficult to build this missile when it is non-nuclear, because the velocity of these missiles near the target is too high for explosive materials. So usually these missiles, they are built only for nuclear war and not for a traditional war with explosive materials. So they can strike again with one or two missiles from this kind. But you and me probably, we didn't hear anything about casualties in this strike, because probably there were no casualties in this strike. And we saw today the pictures from the satellite, from this object, from this plant where Russian missile struck. And there is no new ruined building or something. So it was rather empty missiles. But there is also political consequences, because obviously these missiles was sent towards Ukraine as a warning. When what the next Putin step will be nuclear weapon, usage of nuclear weapon and not the traditional weapon. They sent it us as the last warning or something like that. Next time it will be a nuclear weapon. So obviously the answer from Western side could be not military but more political. It's difficult to say, but I look for the new sanctions against Russia. For example, these kind of missiles, or Oreshnik or something, were operated not only by military forces, but also by Roscosmos, which is generally a civil organization. But this civil organization, they built these missiles, because this is like spice missiles. And Roscosmos, this is a huge organization, huge technological tycoon inside Russia, which is not under the sanctions. They are not under Western sanctions at all, in spite of participating in this war by this kind, for example. And the reason why Roscosmos is not under the sanctions, it is because United States, till now, till this day, they have common programs with Roscosmos. They send together, for example, the people to the spies, together with US and Russian people on some Russian ships or something, I don't remember exactly, but there is the cooperation, And the nuclear station is was built in cooperation between the United States and Russia. So probably I hope that we will have sanctions, new sanctions against Roscosmos, or at least against some daughter companies of Roscosmos.
I agree with you, Michael, because we see that Putin is trying to scare everyone away from supporting Ukraine, first of all, and Ukraine's partners must do the exact opposite, reject the blackmail, increase support, and strengthen Ukrainians' air shield with systems capable of intercepting such missiles, and also sanction, as you said. And also journalists analyzed the behavior of Kremlin dictator Vladimir Putin during his speech about the Oreshnik strike on Dnipro. They discovered one ODT reports Bild, and on the evening of November 21st, Vladimir Putin delivered a video address stating that the city of Dnipro was struck by the latest medium-range missile Oreshnik, as we said, and his speech lasted 7 minutes and 45 seconds. It was noted that during the entire address, Putin did not move his hands or fingers even once. They appeared to be glued to the table. What's happened to Russian dictator?
Well, before that, before shooting this video and before this strike, Mr. Putin disappeared from any media and from any official meetings for more than 2 weeks. And this is the longest period during our 3-year war when Mr. Putin just disappeared totally. We saw him last time in BRICS, and after BRICS meeting, BRICS forum inside Russia, and next time he appeared in a big economic forum in Valda in Russian Federation, and afterwards for 2 weeks nobody has seen Mr. Putin. And we know that after each big effort, like this forum, for example, Mr. Putin usually disappears. It means he can't stay for a long time working. He can't stay for a long time in good physical fit. Obviously, he needs the help from some medicine. He needs help from doctors. I don't know exactly what kind. But this time, it was something very serious when he disappeared for 2 weeks. And Russian press and Russian media, during this time, they published some meetings between Mr. Putin and, for example, with some Russian politicians, with some regional leaders or something. But from the conversation, we could understand that this meeting was a year ago or half a year ago, because they discussed the news from a year ago, half a year ago. And this new video was shot rather as emergency. It was not planned. It was something unusual. Then our army used ATACMS and Storm Shadow, and Russians, they needed some answer from their leader. So they shooted that, and I believe they shooted that as, they used something like artificial intelligence. I mean, the Putin is real Putin, but they shoot just a part of his body. And obviously, probably he doesn't look good now and doesn't feel good. And this picture with hands, they just put it together in editions. So this is not, by the way, this is not something very, very new. But this is the first time when serious Western media paid their attention for this fact, that this is not exactly realistic Mr. Putin, and this is something else. In this speech, in this Mr. Putin speech, this speech was also very not ordinary speech, because he didn't start this speech from his permanent first word like "Dear Russian nation" or something like that. He just started from the middle of nowhere, from the middle of nothing, with any context, and he started from "I want to report to Russian warriors and to Russian army." So he started this as a speech towards army, not towards nation. It was also very, let's say, something outstanding. Yeah, it was something outstanding. So probably he believes, Mr. Putin believes, that his army now is doubtful about his possibility to somehow to confront with Western weapons, which Ukraine has now.
Michael, about DPRK missile, the War and Sanctions portal has published a list of foreign-made components found in the North Korean KN-23, KN-24 ballistic missiles. At least one of them, a voltage converter labeled by the British manufacturer XP Power, was manufactured in February 2023 after the start of the full-scale invasion, according to the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine. How can we find a way out of this situation? Because we know that Russia and its allies, the DPRK and Iran, use joint schemes to circumvent international sanctions.
Yeah, first, this is North Korean missiles. So North Korean missiles were not connected to the beginning of full-scale war. You know, in February 24 or in May, on February 23, nobody knew, nobody expected that North Korea will take a part in this war, yeah? So this is not connected one to other. But still, against North Korea, we have UN sanctions, and against Iran, we have also United Nations sanctions. And these sanctions, they ban supplying of any equipment which is connected to missile program towards North Korea and towards Iran also. And obviously now there is not enough efforts to really stop this supply. Because we have Western sanctions against Russia, and this is one kind of sanctions, because the foreign ministers or justice ministries of US and EU, they are in charge of these sanctions. But in this case, when we are speaking about sanctions against North Korea, so United Nations is in charge of these sanctions, not US and not European Union. So probably what we can do with that, or Western world could do with that, to put the new sanctions, which will be exactly Western sanctions, not United Nations sanctions. United Nations sanctions obviously out of control now. But UK, UN and EU sanctions against North Korea and Iran will be the good news about that, and it will stop. It will stop from these cases. Then North Korean will use British components for production their missiles.
Mm-hmm. Michael, what also Western world could do about discussions on deploying Western troops and private defense contractors to Ukraine have resumed in Europe after Donald Trump's victory in the US elections, reported by Le Monde. About details, the debate is sensitive and classified, but according to the newspaper, the issue of deploying ground troops to Ukraine has once again been placed on the agenda of European leaders. Could Europe, and not only Europe, support extend to deploying ground troops to Ukraine or not?
You know, it looks like more and more realistic. It started from claim of French president, Mr. Macron. It continued with some speeches of Boris Johnson, former British Prime Minister, who said that if Mr. Trump stops the military help to Ukraine, so United Kingdom should send the military troops towards Ukraine. And on November 11th, the day, by the way, when First World War I was stopped, Keir Starmer, Prime Minister of UK, and Mr. Macron, President of France, they met in Paris and they discussed this issue. And it looks like it is a realistic step. It is more or less realistic step, because their discussion was exactly about new situation, about new reality, how Europe should behave in new reality when US could stop military help. And this is the only decision. Europe doesn't have enough weapons. And Europe doesn't have certain kinds of weapons which United States has. So Europe should act something with some new ways. And the only new way is really to send troops. It could be united troops of not of European Union, because there is no European Union army. But as a base, it could use British and French troops. But we have some dozen of countries who somehow proclaimed that they are ready to join. All three of Baltic states are ready to join to this program. Poland is ready to join to this program. Netherlands, Sweden, Norway. So at least we will have 10 or till dozen of countries. And this is not anything new in European history. They sent troops toward Bosnia, they sent troops to Iraq, they sent troops to Afghanistan, so why not to send troops to Ukrainian territory, especially then Ukraine asks for that. And especially then there is the danger for millions of citizens of Ukrainian cities. Example, Zaporizhia. Zaporizhia is the city of 1 million people, and Russians, they say that they will start in nearest future the attack on Zaporizhia, on the city of 1 million people. And it is very dangerous, and it is the right time to send troops.
We look forward to that day. And also, Michael, we talked a lot with you about sanctions. And I see information that the United Kingdom has imposed sanctions on 30 ships from Russia's so-called shadow fleet, which were involved in transporting oil and petroleum products worth billions of pounds. This is the largest sanctions package of its kind, aimed at limiting the Kremlin's ability to finance its war in Ukraine, according to the British government. Do you agree that oil revenues are a key source of funding for Russia's war against Ukraine?
Oil and gas, yes, obviously oil and gas, and maybe some metals like aluminium, or not steel, but nickel also. But it is very difficult to stop, to put sanctions on nickel, because Russia is a huge producer, and they have a huge share of world production of nickel, for example. But in oil, we have enough oil in other countries. So it is there will be no shortage of oil on world market when you put sanctions against Russian oil. And what Russians do now, they send more and more oil towards India. And India now is the main, I believe, the main client on buying Russian oil. After China, before China, I don't know, so it is on first or second place. But if to China, Russians could send then oil through pipelines, but if India, they don't have any common border, so they send it by tankers, by ships, and they have not ships which are not under sanctions, Russians. So they bought a huge fleet, a really huge fleet of hundreds of different kind of tankers, but towards India they can send only big tankers. So we are speaking about dozens of these tankers. So this is very good news. Then Indians, they can't buy the oil. And by the way, Indians, they follow these sanctions. They don't buy an oil from these unsanctioned tankers.
And also, the U.S. Treasury Department has expanded sanctions against Russia. They affected Gazprom Bank, in particular, which accepts payments for gas from Europe and is also a conduit for the purchase of military equipment and payments to the Russian military. How do you think why the bank is on the blocking list now, how it will also affect gas exports, and whether it can undermine Russia's ability to wage war?
In October 2024, just a month ago, there was a report that Russia again became the main supplier of gas towards European market. It was the first time since the beginning of the war that Russia became the main supplier of gas. And all the payments for this gas they went through this Gazprom bank. That was the last bank which was not under the American sanctions. Last big bank, I mean. We have just some small regional banks in Russia, but that was the last bank, and all the payments from Europe for this gas, they went through this bank. So, in fact, it could stop all the gas trade between Russia and Western Europe. Like it stopped a lot of trades between Russia and Turkey, Russia and China, in big number of goods and some another metals, for example. Then United States put the sanctions on some Russian banks who worked with China and Turkey. So I believe it is the best news for us from the financial market, and also Russians recognized it. I checked what published in Russian economic press about this move of American authorities, and they said that this is the most important sanctions starting from March 2022. That says everything.
Michael, thank you for this interesting and important conversation. Thank you for supporting Ukraine. I need to say that Michael Sheitelman, the political strategist based in Kyiv, Ukraine, was with us today. So guys, subscribe on our YouTube channel. Also subscribe on Michael Sheitelman YouTube channel called Sheitelman. And we wish you the best and see you.
Thank you. See you again.